Testing the audio, just testing the audio. This is Jack Brook at Columbia Gorge Community College, and we'll see if we're cracking now. Could you settle down, please? Could you have a seat? We're about ready to get started. Could you please sit down? Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, you are sitting. Okay, don't mind me. Okay, today we're going to look at nutritional status. And look at how we determine nutritional status. But first of all, we'll look at this is nutrients and unhealthy nutrients, healthy nutrients. I'm not sure where we got some of these unhealthy nutrients. To me, pesticides would not be under the heading of a nutrient, nor would greases. I'm not sure exactly if that's greases on a car, whatever. Anyway, I just got this off of Google Images and thought it was interesting. But the healthy nutrients are pretty valid, but again, artificial colorants is a nutrient, unhealthy nutrient. Yeah, tobacco, I guess if you chew tobacco, it would be. But anyway, we're going to talk about nutrients. First, I'm going to give you a little quiz, though. So most of you are from Oregon, so I want to see if you can guess these Oregon towns and see how good you are about your Oregon knowledge. Anyway, let's go to number one. I'll give you about 5 seconds to see if you can figure that out. It's what the arrow is pointing to. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, drain. Okay. Number two. It should be a gimme. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Mount Angel. Number three, I'll give you a little hint. The apple is something you would walk through. So see if you can get that one. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A lot of you probably didn't even know that town existed, but Applegate. Number four, it's in the area of the Dalles. And you should be able to get this one pretty easy. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, Moppin. Number 9, pretty, it's kind of a gimme, but 3, 2, 1, Burns. And 10's kind of a gimme, hopefully. You got 2 of them, so they are sisters. 11, you got 2 of those, so 2 of those would give you Biggs. 12 may be a toughie. It is a rock, and it is smiling, so it's a happy rock. It has a flower in its hair, so I guess you might call it a 60s rock. But anyway, it's close to Portland. It's not close to the Dalles. So let's see if you can get that one. Gladstone. Yeah. Okay, well, we may look at some more towns later on down the road. But let's get to nutrients. What are nutrients? Well, we look at nutrition. It's just basically how we bring in nutrients, which are things we get from food, and how our body utilizes those for growth, maintenance, repair. So that's basically what it is. There are some more sophisticated definitions of nutrition, looking at the psychology and economics and on and on and on and on and on. But for our purposes, we're just looking at how nutrients affect food. Just a second, I'm going to turn on my phone in case it doesn't ring. I'll be back in a second. Okay, I got the old do not disturb button on there, and we'll get back to this. Anyway, so looking at the nutrient classifications, you should have seen these in your text and read about those. But we're going to separate them into organic nutrients and inorganic nutrients. Let's see if you can guess the 4 organic nutrients. I'll give you a few seconds, see if you're correct. There's 3 of them that are energy producing and 1 that is not. See if you can differentiate the energy producing, which ones are not. So the energy producing ones are carbs, lipids, and proteins. And the non-energy producing are the vitamins. So vitamins are organic, but no matter what people tell you, you can't get ATP from vitamins. They are part of the process, but taking more vitamins is not going to give you more energy. Anyway, and the inorganic nutrients would be minerals and water. There is one that is not really a nutrient that you can get energy from, and that is alcohol. So here's kind of the breakdown. I do need you to know the 6 classes of nutrients, and which ones are energy producing, which ones are not, and which are organic, which are inorganic. I also need you to know the calorie levels for each of the nutrients, especially when we get to the food label and we have to figure out calories per serving on those. So get a good handle on these, and not too hard. You just have to do a little bit of multiplication. I might add that in your first exam, you'll need a calculator handy, so make sure you've got one of those. Here's essential nutrients. Basically are nutrients where we can't make them ourselves. We have to get them from food. And now this is kind of a bigger list than I would have. And some of them are kind of strange. Like if you've had any chemistry, a non-essential nitrogen is an amino acid. Yeah, I'm just not sure how that fits into there. And again, I wouldn't, I don't know. But anyway, excuse me, most of them are valid, but these would be considered essential. These are things that our bodies cannot make. There are some non-essential nutrients. There are 20 amino acids. I'm not sure. See, some of these, I'm not sure that I would expect you to know there's 8 essential nutrients. I don't expect you to memorize this table, but for adults, there are 8 essential nutrients. For little kids and babies, there's 9, but there's 20 total amino acids. So obviously, if you have, even if there was 10, there would be 10 non-essential nutrients, which means our body can make those. So I just need you to know that essential nutrients are nutrients we have to get from food because our body cannot process those. There are some non-nutrients, though, that we will talk about. Chemicals that have really no nutritional value, but they are necessary to reduce risk of disease. You can keep individuals that are comatose and to feed them with the nutrients, and they can survive for a long time. But these are non-nutrients that basically help reduce risk of cancer, osteoporosis, heart disease, those kinds of things. And we will refer to them as the phytochemicals, and we'll get into more detail about those. So I just wanted you to know there are important things in food that are not classified as a nutrient, which is why we can't get everything from a pill. We need to eat real food to get all of the nutrients and non-nutrients that are important for health. So nutritional status is basically looking at how our body's using those nutrients and are they available to the body and that kind of thing. So we're going to look at how we determine nutritional status. But when you hear the word malnutrition, you probably think of the pictures you see on the television where you quickly turn the channel of the little skinny starving kids with the big bellies and that kind of thing. And that's the first thing that comes to our mind when we see the word malnutrition. But what does the prefix mal actually mean? It actually means bad. So malnutrition means bad nutrition related to a deficiency or an excess. So getting too many nutrients is also considered malnutrition. Undernutrition is usually classified as a deprivation. There's two types, or maybe I should say 2 ways that you can get deprivation. Primary would basically be where your food doesn't have enough nutrients, and you only need to be missing 1 essential nutrient, and you would be undernourished. You could get all of the, that whole table we just looked at. You could get all of those, but be missing vitamin C, and you'd be considered undernourished. So it only takes 1 essential nutrient to make you undernourished. And but if you are undernourished because of a diet-related issue, you're just not getting nutrient good foods, then that would be a primary undernutrition. Secondary would be something physical, like say you had celiac disease or Crohn's disease or some other disease that would prevent your body from taking in all the nutrients. Then that would be a secondary issue for undernutrition. Overnutrition, obesity or toxicity. Uh, Obviously, obesity is taking in too many nutrients. Toxicity, like for example, any of the fat soluble vitamins like vitamin A or vitamin E, vitamin D in excess can be toxic. Too much fiber can be toxic. We'll talk about that. So you can get too much of a good thing. And that would be also classified under the heading of malnutrition. So there are a lot of malnourished people in this country that don't fit the undernourished category but are overnourished. There are four ways I need you to know of how we determine nutritional status. And doing a nutrition assessment is one of the criteria that a dietitian would use in order to determine nutritional status of a patient in a hospital. So doing the primary screening of when a patient is brought into the hospital and you do your nursing or whoever does a primary screen is very essential to a dietitian, because they use that information to make a determination as to whether they should go see a patient or not. The protocol for a dietitian is that they come in each day, they look at the new admits, and they look at the screening of what the nurses have written down, and we'll go over those things. And then they make a determination based on some protocols of whether they need to see the patient within 24 hours, whether they can wait for 4 days, that kind of a thing. But I mean, if somebody comes in with a broken leg, they probably aren't in the hospital 5 days, so a dietitian wouldn't visit them. But if they continue into the hospital, they have to see them within that period of time. But if somebody comes in had a heart attack, they would need to see those individuals within a 24-hour period. So the assessment is going to be critical for a dietitian to know, what they need to do. Now, this diet data wouldn't be part of the initial screen. That's something that a dietitian would actually do when they go visit the patient. And there's three types of ways to obtain a diet data. One is a history. So you'd ask the patient, well, what do you normally eat? What's a typical day for you for breakfast? Do you ever have anything at 10 o'clock? Do you ever have an afternoon snack? How about before bedtime? Do you ever do that? So they'd go through the whole history kind of thing to get a basis of what kind of foods that person would eat. A recall is more recent. So what did you have yesterday for breakfast? Did you have anything at 10? And is that typical? Anything at lunch? So it's a more recent recall of what they had within recent days. A diary is what you guys are going to be doing when you do your diet study. You keep a diary. Officially, a 7-day diary is what is needed for statistical purposes to be statistically accurate. But you can imagine, and I can, if you started your diary, your 3-day diary, you can imagine trying to do that for 7 days, an individual doing that. They probably won't, and they don't. So trying to do the best that you can for a few days so that they actually write down what they eat would be important criteria. But for a dietitian in a hospital in that 24-hour period, a recall probably would be a better option. But this diet data can give you some pretty good information about nutritional status, if it's could possibly be a primary issue or a secondary issue. And so the diet data would give you a good indication of what their intake is, so they could either rule in or rule out a primary undernutrition or malnutrition type of thing. Anthropometric, again, this would be something that the screening process of new admits would be important for a dietitian. Height, weight, maybe not limb circumference, but usually new admits, they get their height and weight, and you always do that when you go see the doctor anyway. And that's, again, it's part of the assessment criteria that's necessary. So those are pretty important indicators for dietitian or in the hospital. Physical examination, again, sometimes in screenings and new admits, they can make some observations about posture, about skin color. If you get good, some nurses and healthcare professionals can look at the skin, and they can do some skin tests, and they can see if they're dehydrated or something like that. Hair, eyes, there's some different physical examinations you can do. And then the ultimate would be the laboratory tests. So the dietitian would, read the patient's charts and look at blood chemistries and urine analysis and that kind of thing, which would help them in order to make an assessment about, well, what kind of diet protocol should we have for this patient, kind of thing. But blood pressures, would be part of this criteria and stuff. So they're pretty important. But these would be the 4 things I would want you to remember about what is necessary to do a true nutrition assessment for a patient, kind of thing. And here would be a typical nutrition assessment form that a dietitian might use. Now, each hospital is going to have their own individual one. The dietitians there will make up one that they're comfortable with, but this is just kind of a general one where a dietitian would use these, and usually they get them on a printout anyway, because it's kind of a hospital form. But they would go through these, and they would write their own comments, and then you can see at the bottom where they go through their diets, see if they have any allergies, likes, dislikes, and then they may have another page where they would document their normal eating habits and that kind of thing. But this would be pretty typical. There are 2 surveys that I want you to know. One would be a food consumption survey, and I should preface this to say that surveys are done around the country to see how the population is doing. Again, we talked earlier about the RDAs and DRIs and that kind of thing. We'll talk more about them later, but if you remember, I said the RDAs are changed about every 5 years. So there has to be some data coming in, and then there's some trends that will be looked at as to what populations are eating, and if things are changing over the years, and we're going to look at one here in a bit. But so food consumption would just be, and a lot of these are government funded, but they just be going out to different parts of the country and doing surveys about what people are eating. How many fruits and vegetables are they getting a day? How much meat, that kind of thing. And so they would talk to people. They'd have people fill out surveys and hopefully return them, and then get a look at the trends of how people are eating. Nutritional status is a little bit more expensive one that's only done probably maybe every 10 or 15 years, kind of a deal, because the nutrition status survey would be one where you do all 4 assessments. So you'd have a big team. You'd have a team of doctors and nurses, dietitians, and even economists and sociologists and things that would look at the living conditions and the economy of the area and put that all into a package. Something like was done several years ago, the 10-state survey, where they went to 10 different states and different areas and did pretty much a nutritional status survey. And you can imagine the millions of dollars that would cost. So they're not done very often, but they're an important piece to determine several things. Number one, how is the population doing nutritionally? What is their nutritional status? Has it changed over the years? But also to get some data as to what kind of information should the government be giving the population, what kind of nutrients maybe are deficient that they should be warned about. It could also reflect things that would be on food labels. You know, what are the nutrients that are more important on food labels? And I would expect in the next few years a new food label would be coming out that would reflect some of the different nutrients that are more important now than when the first nutrition food labels came out several years ago. But anyway, so I do need you to know the difference between food consumption, which would just be food intake, which would be diet data, and a nutritional status survey, which would be diet data, anthropometric, physical, lab, the whole works kind of thing. But let's look at a recent, well, this is the most recent I've got. They usually do them about every 5 years. So this is 2010, looking at a consumption survey that was done around the country, looking at the changes in the diet of Americans basically from 1970 to 2010. This is kind of full-blown picture and looking at, this is calories per person per year, but you know, we're really increasing in our grains. Our meat, poultry kind of level. If we look at fats and oils, they're going up. Sweeteners, I can't believe they're going down. And then dairy, stable. Fruits and vegetables, pretty stable there. But what we're going to go through is looking at a report card where they actually give the population a grade as to how are we doing from 1970 to 2010. So let's just go through this and see if you can have an idea of what kind of a grade people would get on these. If we look at fruits and vegetables, we basically look at the data and pounds. So this is 80 pounds, 100 pounds. So looks like we're going up. You know, vegetables are improving, looks good. Fruits are going up. Potatoes and those kinds of things are kind of going down. What kind of a grade do you think that they would give? It looks like we're improving and doing that. So they actually did give them an A minus. I think the minus is because of the salad dressings and things that we put on our foods. Those kind of, you know, are a drawback to giving it a full-blown A kind of a grade. If you hear me shuffling, I thought I had that data sheet here somewhere, but I guess I don't. But anyway, it's pretty much, I mean, we're doing better, and so we're doing in the A, but we're just adding maybe some to our vegetables, some margarine or more oil or salad dressings that are high fat. What do you think about beef? Beef is going down. Chicken is going up. The white meat. Pork is about the same. Fish, turkey about the same. Kind of a grade that you think you gave this one? They gave it a B minus. I mean, it's good because red meat is considered to be a risk factor in heart disease and cancer, and so it's going down. So that's good. Looking at the beef section, can you tell when cholesterol and saturated fat as issues in health came to the public? Can you say about 1977? Things started dropping like crazy. And you know, the farmers, the ranchers in Wyoming and Montana were just beside themselves. And it was actually, you know, a little bit of misinformation. But anyway, you can see where that marketing came down, but it's continued to go down. But chicken's going up, the white meat, that should be good. Well, the problem is we're still eating chicken that is high, you know, fried, you know, high fat kind of thing. So it's not getting any better that way. And the way we're you know, deep frying fish and that kind of thing is not doing us any good. So B minus here. I might add, you know, you might wonder why Kentucky Fried Chicken changed to KFC. You can probably think, you know, the reason is because they didn't want to hear the fried in there or have people see the fried in the name, because that's kind of a negative connotation there. How about flour and syrup? You can see flour going up. It's kind of stable. It's hard to believe it's going down with all the bakeries and stuff. Everything's kind of, all the starches except for oats are kind of going up. Kind of a grade do you think they gave that one? Basically a C, because what's going up is more white flour than wheat flour. And the rice is going up is white rice and refined starches and things like that. So a C, we're doing better, and we're getting more plants, but we're still eating more. We're replacing flours with fat. I mean, we're reducing fat, but it increased our bread intake and flour and that kind of thing. So that's one of the other reasons. Um, Pounds per year, fats and oils. Ooh, look at this. Ooh, going crazy. Ooh, going crazy. You would think that we would be failing. They actually gave it a B plus. It's hard to imagine, but I don't think we're doing better. And it doesn't look like we're doing better in eating less, but we're eating more oils than we are shortening. So you can see with the shortenings going down, but the oils are going up. And margarine is going down with the trans fats. Butter's pretty stable, but we're getting more of the olive oils and the canola oils and things like that in our diet. But still, you can't say this is good, because it's reflecting on obesity and things like that. What about milk? You see whole milk's going down, and 2% milk is going up and kind of stabilized. Fat free is going down. What kind of a grade do you think? Um, a B. A B because whole milk is going down. That's good. And we're replacing it maybe with 2%, but we're not doing good enough. I mean, how much fat is in whole milk? See if you can guess. It's basically about 3.5%, around 3.5 to 4%, kind of like that. Well, how much milk is in 2%, or fat in 2%? 2%. So that's good. So the difference between 3.5 and 2% is not that much. So what we're not doing is increasing, if we're drinking dairy, increasing our skim milk. I wouldn't recommend doing this all at once. I grew up on a farm where we milked our own cows and did all that kind of stuff. And we had whole milk all of my pretty much growing years. And then when I got interested in nutrition and that, then I started reducing and I went directly from whole milk to skim. Don't ever do that. That will not work, I guarantee you. So, because it tastes terrible. But what I did was kind of went from, what I did is diluted my whole milk with 2%, did that for a while, and then went to 2%, and then diluted my 2% with 1%, did that for a while, and 1% in skim, and then I went down to skim. And now, if I drink whole milk, ooh, it's just like cream. You get that little, slickery feeling in the top of your mouth, and your tongue slips all over the place, and then you get that little bubble in the back of your throat that pops in. Ooh. So anyway, I can't drink whole milk. It's too thick, for whatever reason, and so I'm a skim milk drinker, and I do drink milk. I mean, think about it. What are you going to dunk your Oreos in? Water? I mean, come on. Let's be serious. Just kidding. How about dairy? We just did milk, but cheese is going up. Oof. Seema, how much fat is in cheese? Are you saying 70%, 80%? Yeah. So the reason it's a C minus is because cheese is going up. And one of the things that happened in 1977 when animal beef went down was people started eating more cheese, which was actually worse. And we're going to talk later about, there is some data out there that dairy fats are actually the worst fats that you can eat. So we'll look at those later on. But yogurt's going up. I mean, I think that's what kept it in the C range. But ice cream, low fats, but the cheese is just going crazy. So you need to get rid of your high fat cheese. Corns, sugar, and syrups, D plus. I mean, we're eating more sugar now than, I mean, yeah. And this I find very hard to believe. I don't know. High fructose corn syrup, I mean, yeah. So anyway, but they say it's going down. They put it in the plus range, but we're still eating more sugar than we've ever had in the history of mankind. Oops. Excuse me. I need to go in here and sorry. Okay, we're back in the ball game again. Okay, so beverages, yeah. C, we're drinking more soda, going up. Milk's going down. Coffee's. This is just extremely hard for me to believe that coffee is less than it was in 1970. I don't know what kind of coffee they're looking at, but and then fruit juice, bottled water. Look at the bottled water. The problem is the plastic bottles. You know, it's long. Refill your own. Diet soda. You know, it's just not good. I mean, we're kind of average, but I mean, why they gave it a C because we're drinking more water and it looks like soda's going down. But yeah, I find this hard to believe. Anyway, I need you to know these dietary goals of 1977. I need you to know the numbers. We're going to use these in our diet summary that you're going to be writing. And I'll ask you questions on the exam about these, but these basically reflect that how many calories from fat. So, you know, less than an equal 30%. I mean, they'd like to get this down to 20%, but nobody's reaching 30% now. They even raised it to 35% because nobody reached 30%. But we're going to keep these goals anyway because they're valid. People should be trying to reach them. But here's where we are now. You can see carbohydrates are 44 to 48%. The problem is it's not complex. Do not be surprised if even if you're in the 48% range or 58% range that we need to be a total carbohydrate, don't be surprised if your sugar is half. If you're a typical, unless you skew results, typically, you know, 50% of the calories are from sugar. So even if you're at the 58%, you wouldn't feel comfortable until you looked in what is your ratio of complex to sugar. And I bet it's close to 50% of the total carbs are that. Plus, the other thing we'll be looking at is even though you're at 30% calories from fat, how much is saturated. If it's over 10%, then that's not good. Even though if you're under the total percentage, the type of fat that you'd be eating is not good. So this is a typical, I don't expect you to remember these numbers. I do want you to know these numbers. Okay, so we go through. Here are a list of deficiencies. These are the most recent data I could find. Iron and calcium have been deficiencies since the first survey was done in the 1940s, since especially for women. Women have always been low in iron, low in calcium. But these are, I want you to know these are the nutrients basically that most people are deficient in. Vitamin D, especially, you read a lot about vitamin D. If I was you, I would research that, especially in our climate. We don't get enough sunshine. Vitamin D is a sunshine vitamin, but most of the year we're covered up and we don't get out into the sun very much. So there is a high recommendation for a supplement of vitamin D. But again, don't do it because I said or somebody else said. You research it yourself. Be a good scientist. Research the positives and negatives. Talk to your doctor. Maybe get a blood test for vitamin D level and see where you're at. Fiber, again, a reflection of plants. We're not getting enough plants. And energy expenditure, not really nutritional. So please, if I ask you what are the nutritional deficiencies, don't put energy expenditure. That's exercise. It has nothing to do with nutrients. Okay, I mean, it's good, but not nutrients. What are excesses? You can see this is a total reflection of fast foods. Total calories, lipids, alcohol, sodium. Alcohol has been an issue since forever. It's not a new problem. Sodium's high, lipids are high, total calories are. It's a direct reflection of not producing or making our own foods, but eating out a lot and making the wrong choices. So anyway, so this is a look at the nutrients, and so I think this is my last slide. So if I go to the next slide and it goes blank, you'll know.